The hell?
All right. All right, we are good. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for what I know is a last minute information session for this week. But we felt it was really important for us to give our campus community an opportunity to gather and listen to some new information that we have and get a refresher course on the things that we did this fall that allowed us to stay in active session with the hope that we're able to do the same thing for the spring. And so to get us kicked off, I'm going to ask Chancellor Gilliam to say a few words.
Thank you, Julia, and hello, everybody. Welcome back. I hope the holidays were restful and you and your families are safe and healthy. We're getting ready to start another spring semester here at UNCG. And I wanted to talk to you and at least set the stage for how we're going to move forward and what our plans look like for moving forward. Our team of experts that you see on the screen will do the heavy lifting on that, but I do want to point out a few things. Before I talk about our operational plans, let me talk a little bit about the tumultuous events that we've seen the first couple of weeks of this year. I think on New Year's Eve, all of us said, good riddance 2020. 2021 will usher in a new year and new hope. And the events of last week quickly brought us back down to earth. I think it cut deeply for all of us. Many of you probably saw my statements on social media last week, and I do encourage you to follow those, but I made two key points, or at least a couple of key points that might be worth noting. The first is, as we think about the civil society, we're reminded how important it is for us to solve our problems collaboratively. It's a complex world and complex problems, and it requires a great diversity of opinion and talent around the table. And we need to be mindful of that. Also, as universities, we play a critical role in this. We're a place where civil debate and can occur, and training for our future generations happens. We give them the skills that they need to do the hard work ahead for the future of the country. So we play an important role in all of this, and you need to be mindful of that. Also, I think we saw what one might see as a questioning of our commitment as a society to equal justice for all. And based on what many of us saw, I think we have a long way to go. But our campus community, our students, our staff, our faculty have the power to make an impact, have a power to make change. So I hope we can come together and collaboratively work on these tough issues. As if that's not tough enough, I now get to turn my attention to the pandemic, or our attention. There's some light at the end of the tunnel, it appears. But the pandemic will continue to impact our operations. To the extent that there's good news in this, I think our good news is to reflect on last semester, where we really beat the odds. We learned what we needed to do and the kinds of ways in which we needed to do it. We know we can be successful at managing the pandemic on our campus. And frankly, it's thanks to the hard work and dedication of the staff and the faculty and the students, quite frankly, sort of coming together, back to this collaboration theme, coming together to do the things that were necessary to keep the campus safe. So going forward, we've been talking with local public health officials. We've talked to UNC system officials. We've been consulting with our own fantastic COVID team. And we decided to do everything we can to give our students the opportunity to be on campus, even given the current challenges we face. We're going to have to be ready for it, and we'll do ultimately what's in the best interest of the university and the university community as things warrant. But one of the things I would note, and I think we learned from last semester, is that there was no evidence of transmission in the classroom. And we've continued to do things, and some of the folks on the call may speak to this, to enhance safety protocols even more. But we will essentially be returning to our operational plans that we were going with at the end of last term. All COVID protocols implemented last semester are firmly in place. We'll have increased testing. We'll have faster turnaround time. We will have increased the capacity to quarantine and isolate people. And we're decreasing density in the residence halls. We sent a campus email out, I think, on Monday. We're asking the students to test before they move in, the residential students. And throughout the semester, we will have surveillance, what so-called surveillance testing, and we'll have more of it than we had even last term. We will be vigilant with data monitoring, and we'll be in the process, we are in the process of updating the COVID-19 website to include a new tab for spring 2021. And in that new part of the site, we'll also talk about the rollout of the vaccine, of which the planning for it is already underway. It's going to sound weird to say this, but we feel pretty good about where we are. Now, knock on wood and knock on it again, we're able to do the things that we did last semester to keep the campus community safe. It's not going to be easy. And people have to understand that there are going to be sacrifices and inconveniences. And much of it's inconvenience as much as it's sacrifice. Sacrifice for people with regards to their families and their children. But wearing a face mask isn't a horrible thing to ask of folks. Being socially distant isn't a horrible thing to ask of folks. I'm like you, we're all yearning to get back to a time when we can socialize with our groups of friends, that we can go to movies and restaurants, go to concerts. All of us want that. I want that. But we have to understand we're facing a once in a lifetime event, a once in a lifetime pandemic. And so we have to stay vigilant. Now, the key word this term will be flexibility. And that will be applied with regards to terms of and mode of instruction. As you know, during the fall, some faculty made reasoned decisions to move to a virtual environment, and sometimes temporarily, typically to accommodate their own health concerns or the health concerns of students in the classroom. And we'll continue to go down that path. Faculty are going to have continuous face-to-face instruction. They're going to live stream via Zoom, so students in isolation, quarantine can still attend class. We support those decisions. We also know there'll be a lot of classes taken remotely. We believe this kind of fluidity will continue to remain through the term. We just can't predict what's going to happen. As any of you have watched the news, you know there's been a post-holiday season surge. We don't know how long that will last, but it does point to the fact that there are ebbs and flows, and as a result, we have to be flexible in our planning. Before I turn it back over to Julia and the team, I want to stress that we are aware of the stress that juggling all of this has on you. I understand the challenges with your family schedules, with online instruction, your own online instruction if you're a student, online instruction if you're a faculty or a staff person, and for some students doing their own and their children's. And we know, and I know that people are anxious. I get asked questions all the time. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to succeed with our operational plan, but, and this is a big but, If the data indicates that we need to change our plans, if we need to change them in a radical way, we will do so without hesitation. And our mode of communicating here, or our theory of communicating, has been we'd rather over communicate than under communicate. And so we're continuing to try to inform you of what our plans are, what our opportunities are, what conditions are. And the team that you see, I think, Julie, all the team that I see is on the folks in live stream can see, is a very, very capable team. They proved it last term. I'm confident they'll prove it again this next term. So with that, I think, Julia, I think I've probably talked enough. Talk some more if you want me to, but I see several people shaking their heads. No, don't say less, say less. So
Thank you.
I'll say less.
Okay.
Thank you all. Thank
you, Chancellor Gilliam. So a couple of housekeeping issues. This is being live streamed, so it will be available on YouTube after today for folks who are not able to make it or who have to leave during part of the conversation. There is a form, a Google form for folks to put questions in, and we've gotten a few questions, and we'll continue to look at that during the time that we're with you. However, we do have a relatively brief amount of time to try to cover a lot of information. So questions that we can't get to today, and frankly, anything that we do get to today, we will also post as an FAQ on the COVID website. And I cannot emphasize enough how much we need you to continue to monitor your email, social media channels, and the COVID website to stay informed of what's happening. So as Chancellor Gilliam said, flexibility is going to be absolutely key this semester. Patience is going to be key, and humility is going to be key. And that is really, the humility part is something that we are constantly talking about among our group, and always asking ourselves questions. What are we missing? What else can we be doing in order to keep our community safe? Briefly today, we'll be covering our testing strategy. We've had a lot of questions about the vaccine, and Zach will tell you what we know. That is one area where flexibility and patience are going to be critical. We'll also talk about leave options for staff. And at the end, we will talk about flexibility regarding instruction, and we'll have Interim Provost Shelton, who we are thrilled could join us today, and Andrew Hamilton to talk about those things. I do want to reiterate that we continue to be in very, very close contact with both Guilford County public health officials, state public health officials, and our colleagues and partners at Cone Health. Lots of conversations. We talk with their lead infectious disease doc frequently. We have run our plans by them and her, and everyone understands that there is no ideal decision right now, and that we are all trying to make the best decisions that we feel like we can make to support our students and our community. A few things to remember: things will continue to change quickly. You are probably hearing in the news, particularly with regard to the vaccine rollout, a lot of changes continue to come down. But I also want to emphasize that just like in the fall, there are multiple sources of guidance that we are tracking and following. The CDC puts out national guidance. The state health departments can interpret that guidance and determine whether to adapt or not adapt that guidance. And then in North Carolina, our county public health agencies actually have legal jurisdiction, and so they can in turn make decisions. And then as a campus, we are allowed to set some of our own policies. Of course, they can't be less restrictive, but they can be more restrictive if we feel like that's what we need to do to protect our state. So if you ever have questions about why we're not doing something exactly like the CDC is guiding us, it's because there actually are multiple layers of guidance that continue to guide our decisions. I wanted to quickly review our testing protocols. One thing that is different this semester is, as the Chancellor mentioned, we did mandate that residential students submit a test result within 7 days of returning to campus. I am cautious not to say a negative test result, because they just needed to get tested and let us know what the result was. If they tested positive, then our case management team is working with them to give them guidance around when they can return to campus. If they have tested positive within the past 90 days, then they need to show us proof of that because they don't need to get retested. Again, that is per CDC guidance. That is going well. We are providing free testing for students on campus, and students also have the opportunity to get tested in the community. And Zach is going to talk a little bit more, but his team and the housing team have been working frantically to pull those reports in and track them. We will continue to offer free testing on campus for non-residential students and for employees. We had testing today that ends at 3. We have testing again tomorrow in the Dale room in EUC from 9 to 3. And we will continue to send emails out with the registration information for that. I also want to emphasize to folks that testing is a multi-pronged strategy. There's asymptomatic testing. There's also testing of symptomatic folks, and student health is handling that for students, and testing of close contacts. So it's that 3-pronged testing approach, which allowed us to get through the fall, and we hope will allow us to get through the spring. I also want to emphasize that we had no evidence of transmission within a classroom this fall, and that is consistent with what we're hearing from many other universities. All right, so for the first topic, testing, a little bit more detail about that, I'm going to turn it over to Zach Smith and Dr. McMillian.
Great, thanks Julia, and good afternoon, everyone. And before we jump into that, I just want to thank everyone for all the hard work last semester, and it would not have been successful without each and every one of you. So as Julia mentioned just a minute ago, we are actively receiving test results from our residential students. Residential students are required to be tested before entry back to their residence halls, and that has been quite the logistics to make that work. So I wanted to briefly tell you how that takes place. So the residential student has options whether they want to get tested on campus through our provider that Julia mentioned, or they could go out into the community and get tested. And when they have those test results, they submit it through a secure portal that the residential students have access to. And then that information, their test results, comes to our Office in Emergency Management. And we are validating each and every one of those test results documents to make sure it belongs to the right student, that it's within the test range, and what the outcome of that test is. So that's how we're receiving them into the system. Once we validate them, we're turning that information over to Housing and Residence Life to manage the reentry process. Also, those who tested positive within 90 days, they don't have to be retested. So we have that information and we're providing that. And again, students can be tested here on campus, and the on-campus testing provider is sending us the results of that. So kind of a 3-pronged approach to a comprehensive residential testing strategy there. Very pleased in what we're seeing so far, comparatively speaking to what's in the community. So I checked today about noon, and as of that time, we had a little over 1,000 test submissions into that portal, and we're seeing about a 3% positivity rate, which right now is very good comparatively speaking to what we see in the larger community overall. So Tracy, I'll turn it over to you real quick to talk about some of the testing capabilities of student health services, the protocols and of the like, and then we can move on to the vaccine.
Thank you, Zach. So in terms of what's going on at Student Health Services, we are still providing testing for symptomatic students as well as close contacts to someone who is confirmed to have been positive for COVID-19. We have been able to expand our testing capabilities and capacity, so we're very excited about that. We're hopeful that that will help speed up our ability to get results back and shorten that turnaround time so that we can make our decisions and disposition a little bit more expeditiously so that the students will know whether or not they need to be in isolation or quarantine in as timely a fashion as possible. One thing specifically about quarantine, I know that there have been some questions in the past about the quarantine duration. The CDC put out some other options to be able to possibly reduce the time of the quarantine. Those are recommendations, and the CDC also says in their recommendations that they defer to state and local health officials to make that decision. We went to Guilford County shortly after the CDC made those announcements, and after they did their analysis of what's going on in the country, I mean, in the county and the country, but in the county, that they wanted to stay at 14 days. So we will, since we are under their legal jurisdiction, being in Guilford County, we will remain at 14-day quarantine until we're notified otherwise by the county. But the testing process is still the same. If a student has symptoms, they can call over to Student Health. We can get them set up with a telemed appointment. If they're close contact, we can get them set up for a testing appointment. So you can just call our main number, and our staff is ready and willing to make sure we get you taken care of.
All right, thanks, Tracy. And Julia, if you're good, we'll just jump into the vaccine part. To no surprise to anyone on this call, for sure, the number one question we're getting is about the vaccine. And that makes me hopeful for the future to see all of the questions rolling in, which means folks are excited and ready to go forth and seek the vaccine. So I will be as transparent as possible and share every bit of information that we have. And unfortunately, it's not a lot, but it is hopeful, and the information that we have coming from our state and county partners shows, again, some light at the end of that tunnel. So as Julia mentioned earlier, we're in near daily communications with Guilford County Public Health and state public health officials talking about the vaccine. And it is really a collaborative approach. So right now, Guilford County Public Health is working with the Cone Hospital system to roll out the vaccine still in the phase 1A and phase 1B. And if anybody's curious about what I speak of when I say phases, feel free to go to the North Carolina DHH website. It's got the vaccine prioritization list, and that'll help clarify some of the jargon, if you will, of what I'm speaking of. But they're going to continue to work on that. One of the things we're seeing in the county right now, and is a challenge in the expansion of the vaccine process, is just a limited number of vaccines in the community right now. So we're still, Guilford County is still working in that phase 1A for the healthcare providers, and has also started in the phase 1B, group 1, who are those individuals in the community that are 75 years or older. So all of the efforts go into that. So right now the county has 3 vaccination sites. The number one question that we're getting right now is everybody's seen the phase 1B, group 2 and 3, and it mentions educational sector. Guilford County Public Health has told us that our employees fit into that category and would be have the availability or opportunity rather for testing when we get to that phase. The timeline on that is still unknown. And the other main question that we're getting right now is, will we have vaccination clinics on campus? Right now, the county and I say county as in public health, emergency management, and Cone are keeping a centralized process, again, because of the limited number of the vaccines. And they anticipate continuing that centralized process through the 1B prioritization, so groups 1, 2, and 3. So while we are pushing very hard and working with the county to try to bring a vaccination clinic here for our employees, we just aren't sure if that's going to happen yet. I will tell you, one of the things that we're doing, and every time we communicate, is we're offering up our resources, the facilities, our people, you name it. We want to be good stewards in the community in any way we can. So we're actively working with the county in future planning for the vaccine for our population. So when it's our time for the vaccine, how will that work? That's the other main question that we're getting is, and I'm going to describe the process that we did for the 1A group, which is those that are in contact with COVID patients, is we as a university submit a list to the county, who then in turn puts it into a vaccine management system. Once that information is in the vaccine management system, each employee would receive an email, and it would be up to that employee to schedule their appointment and get the vaccine. So that's the process as they describe it now. So with that being said, the caveat to this conversation is, and again, Julia said it, we've got to be flexible. We've already seen the prioritization for the vaccine change. If you watched the press conference yesterday with the governor, the CDC put out some new guidance for bumping it from 75 or older down to 65 and older. The state does not know if they're going to take that recommendation yet, meaning the county has not either. But it just shows you the fluidity of the prioritization process. So while today we are saying we are in that group, please remain flexible with us. We're going to communicate this out. Please stay tuned. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out with the questions portal. But I promise you, we're working just as hard and fast as we can. And when we get the okay to submit the information, we're going to do so for sure. So that's really the vaccine as I know it. Julie, if I forgot anything, feel free to jump in there. And I think Tracy was going to speak briefly on the vaccination and side effects.
Sure, I can talk a little bit about that. The most common side effects that are being reported with both of these vaccines, specifically the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, those are the two vaccines that have to this point gotten the emergency use authorization, are what you would commonly see after any other type of vaccination: soreness or pain at the injection site. You sometimes can have headache, you could have mild low-grade fever. Some folks have also reported some fatigue. Some folks have compared the reaction, however, some folks have a little bit more of a significant reaction. They compare it to when they got the shingles vaccine. If there are individuals that have had that, they've likened how they felt after the first vaccine for COVID to the reaction of the shingles vaccine. Now, obviously, with any type of vaccination or immunization, there's risk for more serious side effects. There is risk for anaphylaxis. There have been some reports of anaphylaxis, which are severe allergic reactions, throat swelling, clothes, shortness of breath, those sorts of things, hives. That is why when you go and get your vaccine here in Guilford County, you will have to wait for 15 minutes and be observed to make sure that you don't have a reaction before leaving the facility. So that also limits our ability. We can't do drive-through vaccinations or things like that because the individuals have to be monitored and have to be monitored in a socially distanced way. So that also limits how quickly folks can get through the vaccination clinics. Both of these vaccines are 2-shot vaccines, and with the second shot in the series, there is an increased likelihood that you may have more significant side effects. You may have more likely to have fever or body aches or things like that may or may not cause you to have to miss work. So that being said, I obviously will defer to Marlon to kind of talk about leave options and things like that. But, when scheduling, you want to think about that when you're scheduling your once you get the vaccine, how to schedule it as far as your time and schedule so that you don't completely deplete a particular department. I know at Student Health, we're trying to stagger when our folks go back and get their vaccine so that there will always be somebody there to be able to staff our building. Excuse me. So there is a little bit more likelihood of seeing that with the second shot. So just keeping that in mind. The other thing I will mention about the vaccines is that they're not interchangeable. So if you start with Pfizer, your second shot needs to be a Pfizer vaccination, and same with Moderna. You can't intermix them or intermingle them. And the Pfizer vaccine is 21 days after the first shot. The Moderna is 28 days. When you get your vaccine, you'll be told when you're supposed to come back. And this county has a really good system as far as reminders and being able to get you scheduled for your next vaccine at the time you get your first one. Is there anything else that you wanted me to cover, Julia?
No, I think that's good. Thank you guys very much. Just a few other quick things about the vaccine. Every county is handling implementation slightly differently and is on a different timeline. So if you live in a different county, you might be hearing that folks where you live, that they're ahead of us where we are in Guilford County. I just wanted to mention that. If you think that you qualify for the vaccine for a reason other than being an employee here, then you will need to contact public health and determine if that's the case, and then sign up with them individually. So if it's an age qualification, for instance, then if you're 75 or older, then you can go ahead and contact them right now about getting an appointment. If you qualify because you are an employee, we will make sure that you get in the system. And there have been lots of questions about students who are doing research, about nursing students, students who work, do they count as employees? We have put all of those on the table with public health, and we don't have answers to those questions yet. And I suspect some of that's going to depend on the actual amount of vaccine that comes in and how quickly it comes in. So stay tuned. If you have particular groups that you have questions about, go ahead and let us know so that we can make sure that we are including those in our conversations. Also questions about, will we require the vaccine? We honestly, we haven't gotten to that part of the conversation. We're just trying to get it to people right now who want it. And then we can start having the conversation about requiring it. I suspect that will start happening here over the spring and through the summer. And we will keep you posted about that as well. But so far, our approach has just been to strongly encourage people to get the vaccine when it becomes available to them. And also, public health is very clear. We need to be honest and upfront with people about the fact that there are potentially some initial side effects. Many of us got immunized when we were babies and don't remember that we might have run a little bit of a fever or had aches and pains for a day. It is not an uncommon thing. It means your body is doing what it needs to be doing and gearing up. It's firing up the immune system to develop the antibodies. All right, I'm going to turn it over.
Before we go on, there are a couple of other things that came to mind. One is, it's important that if you get the vaccine, you need to get both shots. One shot is not going to provide, you get the maximum protection with both completing the series of vaccine. The 95% effectiveness that's being reported is after 2 shots. So that's when it's going to be most effective. Being vaccinated also does not exempt you from continuing to do your 3 Ws, wearing your mask, waiting 6 feet apart, and washing your hands. That's still going to be a very integral part of what we're doing for a while, I anticipate. So it's, and it doesn't preclude you from going and if you were to develop symptoms, you would still need to treat it as if it's possible that it could be COVID. The vaccines are 95% effective, reportedly. They're not 100% effective. So folks can still get COVID. If you get it, though, you're thought to have much more mild symptoms and hopefully an easier course of illness. So I just wanted to mention those things.
Yeah, thank you very much. One quick housekeeping note, we had a technical glitch with captioning. So if for folks who have concerns around that, please come to contact me directly and I will make sure that you get access to this in a way that accommodates your needs. So I do apologize for that. All right, Kathy, do you want to talk a little bit about other student issues, some really interesting research that your team did to understand what was happening this fall with our students and your concerns and requests to staff as they support students moving forward?
Sure. A couple of student-related things that I would highlight about the fall. I think as Chancellor Gilliam has already mentioned multiple times, we're really proud of how our students responded, their adherence to our community standards. In particular, our folks in Housing and Residence Life did some research and that really confirmed what we had suspected, and that is that students were very aware of policies, of the safety standards, of the 3 Ws, and had good knowledge. So all of the work that everybody put into trying to make sure that students were informed and taking the precautions necessary paid off. Our staff also responded in the fall to almost 400 COVID-related incidents. Many of those were incidents that were reported on the COVID incident form by other students. So I think our attempts to have students share information so that we could be proactive before large gatherings occurred and that sort of thing, I think that was also very helpful. The other thing that I'll mention that is probably of no surprise to most people, we certainly saw an uptick in students accessing food from the Spartan Open Pantry and also through the Dean of Students Office, the Safe Emergency Fund. So we know that students, and I'm sure that Dean Hamilton would have many other examples as well as to how we have seen the hardship that many of our students and their families have been experiencing during this time. And so I really just want to remind faculty and staff to really remain focused on student well-being during this time. We know that students staying well is an important aspect to them being able to persist and complete their academic goals. And we know that between what's happened with the pandemic and what's happening in our country around racial injustice and the activities at the Capitol last week, all of this has had an impact on our students. They're experiencing a range of emotions, just like most all of us are. and they need places to be able to process those reactions. Of course, they have access to the services in the counseling center, in addition to the individual counseling. The team there is offering many different groups and workshops. And so I would encourage you to encourage students and for faculty and staff who feel like they could use some additional resources or training to help them be more effective in how they support students. All of that information is also available on the Counseling Center's website. Moving forward, we anticipate having about 65% occupancy in the residence halls. And so I think it is important that we remember that these students are here, they're with us. They want to be engaged, even if engagement looks different. And so our staff will continue to offer all of the services and a variety of also programming opportunities in a virtual environment. But I think the most important thing that all of us can do is really to take the time to reach out to students and focus on having meaningful conversations with them, asking them how they're doing, and really just providing an opportunity for them to express themselves. We know that many students have shared that the experience has been isolating for them. Of course, it's not what they anticipated. And so any opportunities that they have to feel connected to us, to the university, to each other is an important thing for their well-being and honestly for their success as well.
Thank you, Kathy. So we also, of course, recognize that our employees, our faculty and staff, this isn't easy for anyone. Everybody is juggling, whether it's you have K-12 children who are not able to be in school right now, if you have elderly parents or loved ones who you're particularly concerned about, it's tough right now. And I know Guilford County announced yesterday that they're pushing back the in-person start of middle and high school. It's a lot to juggle. So I wanted to get Marlon. We've also gotten several questions about leave options for staff in particular. Wanted Marlon to speak a little bit about what the leave options are right now so we can support our employees as well.
Thank you, Julia. As everyone has heard repeated throughout the presentation today is the term flexibility. And so we, from a human resources perspective, would like to encourage that supervisors and staff continue to have conversations around teleworking and working remotely. As we have just been identified that schools may delay opening, we know that individuals will still have some concerns for childcare, elderly care, and other issues that they will be facing. And so if we have the opportunity to continue or even to increase the amount of teleworking available to certain departments, we would strongly encourage that. That will allow us to keep the numbers of individuals within specific office spaces low. Again, another way for us to kind of fight and deal with the pandemic by reducing the number of individuals that are in the office space. And so that will be critical for individuals to have those conversations with their supervisors around working remotely. And we do encourage that. Now, with that encouragement, we also want to make sure that there is a certain level of expectation of quality and service that is maintained. Although we are moving into more teleworking and working remotely, we do not want to see the services that we've come accustomed to providing to dip. And so that will be of critical importance to make sure that we maintain that. Now, also with that flexibility, we are continuing to provide a benefit to our employees in regards to the interchangeability of vacation and sick time. We know that the FRACA benefit ended as of December 31st, but the ability to utilize interchangeably the vacation and sick time, that will last until March 31st of 2021. And so individuals who need to utilize that time will have that at their disposal. Some more confusion that we did recognize from an HR perspective is that with the end of FRACA, what does that mean for our staff? You know, how are they able to manage What about the time? What about the benefits that's afforded to them? And so although FRACA did end, we still have the COVID-19 option that is available to our staff. And so the way this works is it started in March of 2020, and it actually will go until March 31st of 2021, COVID-19 administrative leave. And what that means is that there is a maximum amount of 80 hours that will be afforded to an individual who is either seeking diagnosis, who has been placed in quarantine or isolation protocol. Those individuals will still have the COVID-19 administrative leave. Now, if an individual utilized that in 2020 and they are still having some issues or concerns, or let's say they have some childcare issues, unfortunately for that in that particular situation, the COVID-19 leave is not an option. However, we still have the availability to utilize our vacation and our sick time to assist us with that particular provision. Now, if an individual has exhausted all vacation, all sick time, and there's nothing else available, and in 2020 they utilized their COVID-19 administrative leave, there is a second provision that is available that is also titled as COVID-19 administrative leave that we are managing here at the HR office, where an individual will receive an additional amount of time that will be granted to them if, again, that individual now experiences isolation, quarantine, or they're dealing with symptoms related to COVID-19 pandemic. And so we are making sure from an HR perspective, we are having the conversations with the supervisors, we're having conversations with the staff to make sure that they are aware of these benefits and what is available to them. And we will work diligently to ensure that we present them with the best options available at the time.
Thank you very much, Marlon. And so if you have questions or concerns around that, please reach out to HR and just continue to talk with your supervisors about any needs that you might have. And so next I'm going to ask Scott Millman to talk to us about some increased flexibility in terms of new options related to dining in general around auxiliary services here on campus.
Thank you, Julia. Just wanted to inform everybody that starting this semester, in order to help folks get food in a socially distant way, we're going to implement Grubhub here on campus. And doing that, you'll be able to use the Grubhub app to order food from the majority of our restaurants on campus. And you'll be able to use your flex dollars if you have them, credit card on there if you need to, and you will be able to order it and your food will be prepared and you'll receive a text letting you know when the food is ready, so you can just go and pick it up in a special location. And in addition, in the food court, we'll also have 15 food lockers where the food will be placed in the locker. You'll receive a code and a QR code and a text when the food is in there, and you'll be able to go and pick it up and just present your code to the locker and the door will open up where your food is. And so hopefully with that, it'll allow folks to not have to wait in lines as much and feel a little bit better about going into the places to get your food.
Thank you very much. And I just have to say again how much I appreciate how hard people have been working to try to make this work for our students and for our employees. All right, next I'm going to turn it over to Interim Provost Shelton and to Andrew Hamilton to talk about faculty and instructional related issues. I did real quickly just want to say the process that we used last semester will be pretty much what we do this semester. There was a lot of effort put over the break into creating appropriate social distancing in all of our classrooms. So hopefully we will significantly cut down on the number of students that we need to quarantine because of that. If you have questions or concerns about spacing in classrooms, if you'll please just let me know, but hopefully that will not be an issue this time around. Also, just a reminder that we ask students to let you know if they are in isolation or quarantine. And when they are released from isolation, they receive an email from us that states that, and you can request a copy of that email if you have any questions about that. I also did want to note real quickly, because we got a question, we do clear both employees and students to return to campus. And we do that, number one, to protect our campus, but it's also to protect you, to make sure that you truly are ready to come back. Some symptoms can last for quite a long time. That doesn't mean that you can't come back yet, but we want to make sure that all is well for you and for us before you do. All right, Terry and Andrew, take it away.
Thanks, Julia. You know, as we said, the buzzword is flexibility, and there were a great deal of options in the fall that I think, as we've already said, helped us to keep things going and moving. And the recent email that we realized was last minute, but wanted to add an additional option for folks on the instructional side and looking at the current conditions that I'll have Andrew talk about in terms of being able to temporarily move to remote instruction. As we've said before, communication is key. We want faculty to continue to make those good decisions based on information on the ground, but in consultation with their chair, but to make sure that Andrew's office has the information that allows us to communicate with students so that they know what to expect. We don't want folks showing up not knowing where things are going. We also know that there are going to be concerns that students will raise, and so that we can have consistent communication. Kathy's office with Student Affairs is there to answer those. I know Andrew will talk about what he'll be doing with students as well in terms of trying to accommodate their request as much as possible. We will continue out of the provost office, working with faculty, chairs, and deans around the anxiety that we know everybody has on workload and other things. It's hard to be as supportive as we want to be of our students when we're not extending that to our faculty and staff that are our front line. So we'll continue to look for ways and answer those questions, work with Faculty Senate and other bodies around that. One quick word about my other hat, research, and then I'll turn it over to Andrew, is that I also want to think we've been able to do a great job regarding what the campus has done, and we're moving forward on scholarship and research. We're following the same approach that we did in the fall, very similarly, looking at a case-by-case basis. We still have the ramp up research portal and are looking on a case-by-case basis. There may be some changes that we're going to need to do depending on the type of research and the conditions at hand, but we're going to continue to try to do what has worked well in the past and keep moving things forward. So Andrew, I'm going to give you opportunity to talk a little bit about how we're going to communicate and try to keep things moving.
You know, you've been watching too much news when you hear that and think that you should yield 3 minutes of your time to your colleague from Division of Student Success. Hey, everybody, I want to begin by sharing some good news, and I think it really, really is good news. I did an analysis at the end of the last term when the grades were all in, and I'm very happy to report that our students did really well. They did exactly the same in terms of mean GPA. I'm talking about undergraduate students. I haven't looked at the graduate students, so I'm sure that Dean Burke is digging into it. So we had the same mean and median almost grade distributions in fall of 20 as in fall of 2019, and about the same number of students who withdrew from courses. So partly because of all that student hustle, and partly because of all that faculty flexibility and attention to students, the fall term, though disrupted in a lot of ways, went as planned and seems to have been pretty good for students. We are not seeing any evidence in the academic indicators that their attempts to make progress on their degrees has suffered because of the way we ran the semester. So we're feeling pretty good about the work we did to prepare for fall, and we're feeling pretty good now about the work we did to prepare for spring. Although you know that because Julia said at the outset, we have made some last minute changes. I mean, they really are last minute. So just very quickly on that. As of about 15 minutes ago, we had 129 courses that were either going to be in person or hybrid, in which the instructors in consultation with their department heads have decided will be offered virtually, remotely, for the foreseeable future until the coast is clear. So I don't know when that will be. If I did, I would tell you, but for now. So just a couple things to make you aware of on that. It is the case that many students very much prefer in-person learning for all kinds of reasons. And one of the most important is the structure that they get from that kind of instruction. So I know we're all going to be mindful of that, but if you're hearing from students that they wish their course hadn't gone online, that's why. Also, a lot of students have residential agreements both on campus and in Greensboro, and are now going to find out in the next day or two that at least one and probably of their courses is going to not be in person. So we need to be ready to help them think through that and make some decisions. So far it is I would call this a shift rather than a pivot. So 129 sections is not anything like the kind of changes we made in summer for fall or in the prior spring for spring term when we first got into our pandemic stance. So these are not huge changes. Faculty still have 2 more hours to make entries. And if they're anything like students, we'll get a deluge of change requests in the 5 minutes before 5 o'clock. But we will push out to students a searchable list of formerly in-person or hybrid courses that will be offered as remote courses for at least probably the first month or so of the term. If you have students who have questions or they want to switch sections or they need a substitution because all of the reasons that students have to want to change schedule options in this pandemic, please just send them to me, and we will figure out how best to help them. And we've had a lot of success with that. I want to give a little shout out to the advising infrastructure and the advising team on our whole campus. They just did a great job in accommodating students in the fall who wanted fully online schedules. I think there were 800 requests for fully online schedules, and my recollection is that only 2 of them were not fully met. That's pretty great considering that we can't offer both online and in-person instruction for every section of every course on campus. We just don't have the capacity to do that. But every student, save 2 that we knew about, got the schedules, got the kind of schedule they wanted. So very happy about that. So that's what I wanted to tell you. I'm looking forward to a great spring term, and I'm looking forward to being on the other end of this pandemic.
And I just want to remind that UTLC and UNCG Online are available as well for those folks who made this decision at the last minute. And we need to be supportive of them as they shift their instruction as well. So thanks.
Okay, thank you guys. I want to just remind people that the reason that we allowed for that flexibility is we know we have some faculty right now who are ill and won't be able to be on campus for the first week or so. We also have students who are ill or in quarantine and won't be able to be on campus. And we're just going to have to kind of continue this throughout the semester. I was so impressed with faculty in the fall who did this back and forth when they would have multiple students who maybe were out of class. I just ask that everybody continue to try to be patient and flexible around these changes that need to be made so we can keep going. Real briefly, please be careful about traveling. It remains anything that you do out of your normal routine is likely to put you at greater risk right now. So I'll mention that. We will continue to not host external entities on campus this semester. The rules around 10 people inside and 25 people outside remain unless it's in a classroom where we can assure appropriate social distancing. And I wanted to give Tim and Samir just a minute here to talk about our supplies situation and where we feel like, we are with facilities right now before we wrap up.
Yeah, I can. Thank you, Julia. Good afternoon, everybody. I will go ahead and talk a little bit about facilities. Similar to what we did in the fall semester, we are going to keep the same preparation protocol for the case management. All those ideas would be similar, what we followed. The only changes what we are going to do is, Julia hinted it earlier, that we additionally socially arranged 51 classrooms. So those are further socially distanced. So that work is complete. Some exciting news is some of you may have noticed that our nursing and instructional building is online now. We are in the midst of transitioning that building for complete operations. There are still some punch list items that the construction team are addressing. But again, as we have reiterated that entire afternoon, flexibility and patience will be much appreciated as our team takes over and goes through the training and does the commissioning for the systems. But the rooms in that building are also socially distanced. So we are good over there. And the PPE wise, we are okay for this semester and getting into summer, but I will let Tim talk a little bit about the supplies and how we address those. Tim, please.
Thank you, Samir. I'm Tim Sloan, Director of Environmental Health and Safety. As far as PPE and protective supplies go, we are the same exact process as we were in fall semester. So if your department received materials from us, continue to submit those requests and we'll get them out to you as soon as possible. But basically all the same, our stocks are good and will hold us through spring semester into the summer.
Great, thank you very much. So we have 2 minutes left. I really do just want to reiterate a big thank you to everyone on campus for all the work that you're doing. I mean, this has taken so much effort and folks' leadership and commitment to our students and our community has just been incredible. And the extent to which our team works together collaboratively, I really can't say enough about. It has just been a great group to work with, and we hold each other accountable and are honest with each other and problem solve when we need to. So we do continue to look at the question portal. If you have questions, I'm not talking about the Google form, but just our general COVID question portal, please let us know. We will answer them as quickly as we possibly can. Seen several questions again come through about the vaccine. We promise we will keep in touch. Equity is absolutely a part of our conversations. It's also front on the mind of public health folks. And to the extent to which we have control over it, we will certainly keep that in mind. One thing I will mention is we were able to advocate for not only our direct clinical providers to get immunized, but some of our facility staff who are charged with cleaning spaces after isolation and quarantine to get immunized as well in this first round. So we are extremely sensitive to these issues and wanting to support those who are at higher risk, either because of their roles and responsibilities or because of other considerations. So we are definitely keeping that in mind. Thank you again for joining us last minute. I know there's been last minute changes. It was great to have a break, but then we had about a week to kind of reassess and talk to people and gather all our information and get our plans in place. And we very much, again, appreciate your flexibility to making this happen in such a short period of time. Thank you again. And again, if you have any questions about the lack of captions, please let me know and we will make sure that you get access to the information that you need. And I apologize again for that. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon.